In this episode of Garanex's Escape Cave, I'm going to go over approximately half of the Casters of Valhalla episodes, just give some very brief synopses and basically recommendations of the top ones to listen to regarding unit information and unit strategy about the game. Here we go. This is as of the middle of September 2024, currently episode 44 just released. We'll get there at the end. To start it off, we got these first two episodes, introductions to unit discussion and introduction to luck and skill. These are broad overall discussions of the units. At Mike's own admittance, it's a bit disorganized, but it's a fun discussion. It's just a bunch of guys sitting around talking about Heroscape. Not necessarily a must listen. A lot of discussion of favorite units, worst units, most frustrating units, etc. Then we're going to jump to episodes 3 through 6. You have discussions of A plus through B plus units, and they stop at the B plus units. These are the top units in the game. They discuss the strategy of them. I'd consider these must listens. Episode 7, rankings methodology with Doc, an in-depth discussion of the methodology Mike and Doc used to create their own individual power rankings. Then we'll skip to episode 10, Bonding Melee, 10 through 12. These are the Bonding Melee episodes. These are must listen since these are the core armies of the game, a few of the core armies of the game. Strategy with Jexix, episode 13. History of the strategy articles that Jexix, sorry, I don't know how to say your name, wrote. This is a good listen. It might introduce you to some resources you didn't know were out there, such as the What's in an Order Marker articles. Next is episode 14, Sportsmanship and Competition at Gen Con. This is basically what does it mean to be a good sportsman, to be a good opponent in Heroscape, and how to not be that guy. Thankfully in Heroscape there isn't too many of that guy around because it's a fairly high cost of entry to get into, and the prizes are pretty low. We're all playing for prize dice here, unless something changes in the near future. So, some overview of the points that they go over, such as roll your dice so your opponent can see them, and be consistent in how you do things. If you're using a dice bowl and the dice roll out, you either always re-roll them back in your bowl or always keep what you re-roll. And never keep floor dice. Announce what you're going to do, such as 3 verse 4, 2 verse 5, especially if you're the more senior player and you're kind of guiding a newer player along. If a player makes an obvious mistake, such as putting order markers on a hero instead of a squad, let them know, let them rearrange it, or if they forget and move the squad first instead of the hero. It's all about just being a good opponent. Biggest thing, be a good opponent and don't blame the dice. Next, we're skipping to episode 22. A lot of these in the interim are about ScapeCon in particular, so you can kind of skip those at this point. It's all outdated information. Now we're jumping to episode 22, Green Scales and Nagrubs. This is where we get into some of the king armies. Basically, Green Scales and the Dragons, and then Nagrubs and the Hive Lords. Not as dominant of armies, except for Green Scales and Nilfheim. That'll be an edit. Then we'll jump to episode 24, the Competitive Heroscape Buying Guide. Episode 24, the Buying Guide. The Competitive Heroscape Buying Guide. This is a solo episode with Mike. He basically just goes over the top 11 armies regarding strength and especially how affordable they are to get, such as the Stingers are always pretty affordable to get. So if you're newer to the game, this is a good one to figure out, okay, what do you try to get first? Next, episode 26, the history of competitive maps. Here they do a broad overview of the map making, how the map making has developed over the years, specifically at Gen Con, how at the beginning they were much more range friendly, and then as time went on, as new sets were released, they got much more melee friendly and just were more balanced maps. Episode 31, going to a tournament, what's next? Mike and Ken, they give an overview on how to approach a Heroscape tournament. This is, if you're a newer player, this is probably your single most important episode. Ken lays out the steps to prepare for a tournament, such as decide what type of army you want. Are you going to go for the absolute best in format? Are you going to go for a thematic army? Or are you going to go for a meme army? Like these two I'm going to put on the screen. Step 2, theory craft and practice with those armies and maps. Find out what the maps are going to be used at the tournament. Build them, play on them. 3, think through how your army will face different types of other armies that will be there. Are other people also going to bring best in format? In which case, are you going to bring an army that'll counter that army? 4, have fun. It's a game for 8-year-olds. And 5, don't blame the dice. Next up is episode 32, The Comprehensive Guide to Reverse the Whip. In this one, they discuss the history as to why it changed. It came down to the Gen Con 2010 championship. I'll throw the armies up on the screen here. And how important that change was to the competitive scene, as well as Veggie's army archetypes, such as Short But Good, Toolbox, Bread and Butter, among others. A very important episode if you're interested in playing at the top level. And then we're going to skip a bunch of episodes here and jump to episode 41, AOA Wave 1. This is a good listen if you want to get to know the new units. Episode 42, drafting. Here they do an in-depth discussion of the drafting format and how that's kind of developed at the top competitive level. And the latest episode, this Alex Davey interview, one of the new designers for Heroscape. It's a really good one. And this has been my recommendation of the top 20 Casters of Valhalla episodes to listen to. The ones that we skipped were either about previous Scape cons, their top 100 board games, their top 50 maps, or various other one-off podcasts. But those are the best ones to listen to in order to reach higher levels of play, as Mike says. This has been Garanex's Escape Cave.